We have the delightful Rinat, who I know you all know, who's, of course, a psychiatrist, psychotherapist, who has dedicated her practice to minimizing medication and working with people. And with that, she's going to talk about death, transformation, therapy, relationship.
Yes, somewhat. Okay.
Hello.
Wait. So what is death? I sort of went a little bit stream of consciousness. So anyhow, today I would like to explore death as a process of growth and change that is often unavoidable. But due to its painful nature, in our more traditional Western treatment model, it is often numbed or rejected both on an individual and a societal level. On the other hand, there seems to be a greater human awareness that numbing pain is at best temporary, is not synonymous with healing. So I do see that more recently there is a growing number of individuals who have been seeking less conventional treatment modalities that help connect rather than reject pain. My first memories of death were around the age of 7. I remember sleeping at my grandparents' home and first realizing that one day I would cease to exist. And also, which was even more scary, I became aware that people who cared for me would no longer be here. The thought was so terrifying that for many months I felt that I was not able to fall asleep. As soon as I felt an inkling of fatigue, I also encountered a deep sense of terror, sadness, and helplessness. I had a deep internal awareness that there was nothing I could do to stop death from happening. As a result, I developed a prayer ritual every morning, asking God that I or the people I cared for would not die. I was not able to go to school without engaging in this secretive and lonely ritual, and around 10 years of age, the ritual somehow subsided, but my fear of death has not. As I began to mature into a teenager and later a young college student, I began to experience death in a more of a psychic way that led to my eventual growth and transformation. I remember that during my second year of college, through a series of events that entailed my own search for meaning, changes in friendships, and one complicated romance, all of a sudden, I lost the meaning of life. Nothing seemed to have value or matter, including my schoolwork. This internal experience was incredibly and deeply saddening to me. I lost my connection to joy and was constantly thinking of reasons as to why I should stay alive, but could not find any answers. I'm talking about it because I think that often is a kind of a death process. I eventually decided to commit to a daily ritual that entails spending hours by myself in a library, as well as drawing, looking at artwork. I was looking for meaning everywhere, but could not find it. I was in a deep state of sorrow and loneliness. I was afraid to speak to my friends and family about my situation, out of concern that I would contaminate them with my thoughts or be misunderstood. Years later, I realized that this phase of emptiness had some similar characteristics to that initial internal encounter with death that I experienced in childhood. Both phases felt shocking, irreparable, and lonely. The other common characteristic is that they both seem to begin out of nowhere and end somehow in a mysterious way that was out of my control. What I can say is that at the end of each of these phases, I knew that something in me has shifted. A certain innocence was lost, and I was no longer the same person I was prior to that psychological crisis, let's call it. A few years ago, I watched a Japanese animated movie called Spirited Away. The movie is about a young girl who's taking a road trip with her parents to look at their new home, which was recently purchased. But during the drive, the father decides to veer off the main road and take a side road. The young girl has been feeling bad about the choice to veer off the predictable path, and sure enough, the family unexpectedly finds itself in the underworld. It is a dangerous and scary world with seductions and dangers. The parents who do not transform become tempted by a huge amount of food that they first encounter, and they eat so much that they are turned into pigs. The little girl, on the other hand, does not touch the food. She's left alone in this unusual world and in an attempt to save herself and her parents. She's challenged again and again by monsters and evil creatures. She eventually prevails, and both her and her parents find themselves back in their car in the conventional world. The parents were clearly numbed during the journey, but the child was no longer internally naive. She experiences a shift in courage and awareness, which she pursues completely on her own. Joseph Campbell describes this process of transformation and death of the old self as a hero's journey. The hero's journey has, and the journey has multiple phases. The hero is a regular individual that one day faces a crisis. The crisis can be psychological, where one's old life no longer feels fulfilling or meaningful, or it can be triggered on a more physical level, such as illness or a financial crisis or any one of many things. It can also be relational, like such as a divorce. One thing is clear is that the individual is aware that their life will never be the same again. Therefore, the journey is both internal, often external, but it is a private journey. I suspect that in our current Western world, these types of experiences are often labeled as psychiatric or psychological illnesses, and there is an attempt to cut them off medicinally. This has to do with our embedded belief that emotional or physical pain are unsafe and need to be eradicated. Even though we know that growing pains are real, we often have a hard time accepting pain as integral to the death of the old self and the emergence of the new self. The parents in Spirited Away, for example, are numbed out both physically and emotionally by consuming that big amount of food. We often do that as well in our day-to-day life by engaging in addictive behaviors as a way of minimizing our internal and external suffering. When I meet others for therapy and or medication treatment, the awareness that I am connecting to a person who is in pain and is most likely in the midst of transformation is a complicated one. Often the client wants to eradicate their pain as quickly as possible, whereas the process of a hero's journey, which is the death of the old self, is one that takes time, patience, and tolerance. My role is one of a guide, yet with the awareness that pain tolerance is often personal and individual. Being in a connected therapeutic relationship can be a sort of a roadmap in this journey of change, but it seems that the experience of internal loneliness or being alone with oneself is still integral to the change. On another note, more and more individuals are embracing being with themselves via meditation or a solitary practice such as Vipassana retreats or plant medicine. I recently attended a plant medicine ceremony, and what I found interesting both personally and collectively is that people were deeply aware and interested in exploring their inner pain. There was a feeling of acceptance. If I'm here to heal, I'm ready to touch deeper and deeper layers of pain and trauma. What made the ceremony therapeutic as well was that each participant becomes a witness to other people's pain. One's internal loneliness is balanced by the support of the group and the guidance of the leaders. It is a wonderful way to be both supported and alone at the same time. One of my favorite stories that describes this process of change and death is the story of the Exodus. In that story, the Israelites were defined as slaves over many decades in the land of Egypt. One day, a man by the name of Moses shows up as a guide and is assigned, metaphorically speaking, to take these people to a place of freedom. The Israelites, who initially are very excited to relinquish their old identity, begin to show regret when they first encounter freedom and change in the form of emptiness. They make it to the desert, but the desert offers nothing. It takes 40 years of struggle to transform and create their new selves. We're born from nothing and without the involvement of our will. The rest of our lives, from the time we're babies to the unknown day of our complete death and disintegration, are made of layers of transformation. I recently watched a movie called Perfect Days. The movie is about a middle-aged man named Hirayama that relinquishes his old life and takes on a new identity as a bathroom cleaner in Tokyo. It's the least respectable work. In his new way of being and in his search for the life of simplicity and meaning, Hirayama eventually finds both fulfillment, authenticity, and flexibility. Side note, he takes on this role as a bathroom cleaner, which is like a cleansing. There's an entire ritual there of like dirt and cleansing. Wim Wenders, the director of the movie, has also gone through his own transformation and death experience as a young man. And I'd like to read an excerpt from his biography. And this is what he says. He says, I became very successful without actually ever trying hard. When my wife and I realized that we had nothing in common, we separated by mutual agreement. We totally lost touch with each other. I had become very empty. I drank a lot and also used drugs. I had no more pleasure in life, no aspiration whatsoever. My house, I hated it. My office, I hated it. The people I knew, I hated them. Most of all, I hated myself. I was disgusted with my life and what I had become. I stayed in cheap hotels, or sometimes I didn't even care anymore where I ended up at night. Pain was the only thing left in my heart, a deep, nagging pain, the pain of nothingness. Not even a feeling of loneliness, just emptiness. That was more terrifying pain than any other. One morning I woke up in a hellhole of a bad hotel, with that pain waking up together with me. I thought of ending my life right there. I stared at the empty dark wall in front of me, and the idea of death was the only thing left on my mind to end the pain. And then, believe it or not, a light suddenly showed up in front of me. Somehow, a ray of early morning sunlight has found its way through the adjoining tall and ugly buildings. And it fell on my wall, through the leaves of the only tree that grew in the backyard. It broke into into the nothingness of my mind and my pain. And it was only there for me. And for the first time in my life, I realized that the light on that wall had traveled through the universe over millions of miles, from the sun just for me into my hell. That realization made me shiver. I'm not a religious man, but that light in front of me broke through all my barriers. In an instant, this experience turned me into a new person, and I wanted to hold on to it. That was the only thing I wanted to hold on to. I had no other life to hold on to, anyways. When it happened, I was not aware that you can exist much in the moment. The light from afar, I started to see afterwards, was there all the time, around me, around everybody. But nobody seemed to think anything about it. I became a gardener to be with the light and the trees. The trees need the light to live, and they turn light into air for the breath. I became part of that cycle. In conclusion, regardless if we accept death, it is an internal aspect of who we are. We die again and again as we transform and change through our life phases until we physically pass away and we release our physical and psychological selves. That's it.
Thoughts, comments, questions?
You're my favorite psychiatrist in the world.
Definitely.
Really, really rich. Really rich. Thank you.
Yeah, you don't hear too many psychiatrists talking this way. So it's almost blasphemy, you know, it's really good to hear. You were talking about this anime with the parents eating all the food, and then you went on to talk about some of the patients that just start taking meds, and we've all seen patients just kind of blowed up on the meds, but not necessarily get clarity. Not that I'm saying go off the meds. You've seen that too. That just like meds, and some people have like, you know, 4 and 5 and 6 meds, and
Very often the meds will cause weight.
that's what I mean. That's yeah, weight gain and lethargy,
Yeah.
etc. But then there was something else. Oh yeah, the hero's journey we're talking about. As you were talking, I was thinking about like, well, there's accompanying somebody, if that even is such a thing on a hero's journey. It's usually a solo kind of gig, but not necessarily. I like the analogy a lot. But in terms of who initiates it, what's the role that any of us have in, I don't know if it's bringing somebody to it, that might be too strong, but somehow even raising it as a possibility, some journey. Thought that was pretty interesting to just marinate on while you were talking.
Thank you for that. It's wonderful, and that's really a great film, Spirited Away. Um, I really like the idea that crisis can be transformative. I think that we get trained in our work to be, that we got to manage it, you know, deal with the risk of it. And I think that in doing that, we kind of convey that it's something to be afraid of.
Yeah.
And then we end up kind of squashing someone's opportunity to transform. And so I know from in my work, I also try and move in a transformation, but I think that a lot of people still hold the fear in that, because they've been taught that. So anyway, that's what resonated for me. Thank you.
There is no diagnosis called transformation. You know?
And if you try and talk to other people, other providers of him, that they're moving through something, people think that you're unhinged yourself,
What do you think is so frightening about or disturbing about people in crisis? Not that you think that, but that you notice in other people.
I think that for the person going through it, it can be terrifying, because they're feeling like they're being shattered or split in half or trying to understand that process, I think that can be terrifying. But I think that because people who aren't in crisis that don't kind of view it as transformation, most often when we're seeing somebody in an extreme emotional state, it terrifies us. It makes us think of our own capacities and fragility and vulnerability. And so I think as humans, that freaks us out, and I think it reflects out to people that are going through it.
It makes sense.
There's such a shutting down of those states. Get them away, medicate them away, put them away.
Right. Calm it down, slow it down, turn it down. What a distinction, there's to meet people where they're at. What if where they're at some cataclysmic, Armageddon, unimaginable storm place inside of them? Can the provider handle? You too, you mentioned, you used to work together to open dialogues, so you saw that all the time. Maybe even family members wanted to cap it or.
It's all about management.
Just manage. Yeah. So you two must have seen some pretty intense situations with not just you and your client, but their whole family.
Yeah.
Man.
I think most people go to therapy because they want to relieve their pain. And yet we all believe that you have to go through something painful, paradoxically, to get past it. And of course, medication is a wonderful way to try to shut some of that pain down. How do you think that gets in the way of patients going through those kinds of transformations, or does it actually help them, you think, get to a place where they go through it?
Medications are numbing, and I think sometimes people need a little bit of numbness in order to enter that world of struggle. It's too much for them if they just enter it all at once, and they get really scared. But what really happens, often people get put on medications and nothing changes. There is no real attempt to then, okay, we've been on it for a little while, let's try to now, okay, open you up to more depth, more vulnerability. That's what I see. People get put on medications and they just get stuck in that state for a decade or more.
And that's because of the practitioner.
The medical model,
Yeah, it strikes me very much that it's the desire of the analyst or psychiatrist and stuff that makes a big difference. I mean, the person comes to you with pain and suffering and might have some inkling of what to do, but they might be thinking particularly about, transforming or this or that. They just want the pain to go away. It's not like they don't want to transform. It's just that, if the practitioner says, oh, well, here's some drugs. I'll say, well, sure. But so it's partly the guide. It's well, as you said, it's a medical model. But if people adopt the medical model as the be all and end all, that's going to have a consequence. But if the person comes up with options for that, one of them's medication, one of them's this, one of them's that, and talks them through that, that might have a different outcome. What do you think?
Well, exploring options is already a much more open way of looking at it. But I think that transformation is messy, and it's not always organized, right? And I think that as a society, we're scared of that messiness. And once something looks messy, there is an immediate desire to, okay, put everything back in its place. Yeah. I mean, in the Perfect Days movie, the man cleans bathrooms. So he's dealing with the messiness of life every day. And he cleans, and the next day it gets messy again. I really thought that was profound. Yeah, and acceptance of the messiness of life is a way of transforming.
First step.
What's the guy's name again in that story?
Hirayama, did you watch the movie?
No, but just the translation, not the translation, transliteration over to English. Here I am.
Oh, wow, okay.
I was reading last year this book on psychoanalysis with psychosis by Danielle, is it Napo?
Napo, yeah.
And Michael Seltzer. And they were talking about this idea of messiness. They didn't call it that, but they used the term regression. That in the work, when somebody can become almost like scaffolded enough, whether it's from meds or some other work, that they can then, like the regression has to happen or the messiness has to happen, but they become stout enough to be able to, maybe that's something akin to this hero's journey. They can handle the regression of the messiness. They don't go to pieces. I thought that was really cool. A cool way to look at it.
One kind of association I have during this discussion is kind of like an image of like if you catch like the channel Animal Planet, like when they show like the actual birth of animals or just human birth, it's like messy and it's like, so it's like the therapist's role is to help bring out the new creature or being rather than push it back in. So I guess the pushing back in is like just damping the pain, but then versus helping it come out, it's like messy and disturbing someone.
There's not that many people talk about wanting a transformation, do they? I mean, you think it's more implied or kind of sneaks up on them? I'm not sure most people know why they're in therapy or what they're supposed to be doing in therapy.
Well, they come because of what you said. They have pain and it feels uncomfortable.
They want to
There's
talk
a
to someone.
desire to alleviate the pain. Yeah.
So in a way, it's up to us to try and guide them.
That's what I think. Yeah.
This reminds me, I guess the Sufis and the Christians both have this thing, if there's a both have these parables, like if you're a rich person and you're trying to, achieve enlightenment or go to heaven or something, they get told, well, for you would have to just give everything away. And I was thinking, I feel like, there's some sort of allegory there for patience in the sense that no one actually wants to transform, no one would want to actually go through the loss that it would take to heal, that would be too brutal to think of. Whatever it is that they would sort of least want to look at, least want to work through. That's implicated in the healing process.
It makes me, I mean, this may be completely off base from what you're saying, but it makes me think of the emergent number of people that want to do psychedelics precisely for that reason, to disintegrate.
Mm.
And I mean, and you could make an argument that it's sort of naive and people don't really know what sort of thing, but I do think it's kind of interesting at this time in the world that people are wanting more dramatic change than they have in the past. I mean, really wanting that, and that's why they're going and doing plant medicine often. So there's that urge or urgency to something, and I think it's a search for meaning primarily.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is. But it's this urgency and knowing. I mean, most people know when they take psychedelics that it's going to be crazy and wild and disintegrating.
Mm.
I just think it's fascinating. That's what's happening. People are drawn towards that, and maybe maybe when they get into it, they don't realize what was going to happen, but they know they're into it for something really dramatic.
Mm.
A kind of death drug.
Yeah.
We shouldn't ignore the fact that in 2017 wasn't in this room, I don't think, but it was one of them. We discussed all the altered states and the psychedelics and everything, and it was great. And the thing is that the history of psychedelics is that it was legal and encouraged, and they had thousands of papers and stuff until it was shut down by Congress and all of that. And then finally, it's come back now. And in the New York Times and all that, they talk about psychedelics in a big way. But actually, it's been going, with a hiatus because of the illegality issue for a long time. And I think and the breakdown was breakthrough and all that with, with Lang and the politics of experience and all that. So there's been that, I think, and you think of Aldous Huxley, it's been something that some people have wanted to do over a long time, not to mention tribes and stuff.
Well, yes, and now it's just everywhere. Popular culture compares to what it was. I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, I say that to people all the time that are, oh my God, I've discovered. I grew up in the '60s. I mean, where were you all? It's been, and it was legal and it was used and it was shut down because it was too threatening, and the groundswell is just much bigger now, and it's a backlash to.
There's huge cash.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see the venture capitalists
Oh yeah.
taking an interest, okay. It's like gold rush.
I feel like it's
Yes, and yes, that's what's happening. Is they're getting taken over by that. But I do think the general consciousness wants to break through in a way that is different now than it has been. And obviously, the indigenous nature of all of it's always been there. That's all part of the suppression that's gone on. So the drugs were illegalized. So they're made illegal at that point that they were. But long before that, indigenous cultures have been suppressed.
Mm.
And now there's a backlash and swelling against all that. More and more people are wanting to get that breakthrough.
I think it's a profound loss of meaning. And as you said, and then the kind of deep recognition that a lot of the treatments are really just neoliberal pursuits to kind of get you back in self-optimization.
the keeping you really together and super insightful and hyper aware, and so you can really keep earning. And you want that anyway, so
Sure.
it fits. Back to Rinat, the paper, wonderful. And the way you shared at the beginning your story of that memory and that, and I feel like I knew that from other parts of your life you shared with me, but I knew it more in your adolescent years and the college years and all that. But that was, must be profound to speak that here. I just wanted to recognize it, you know.
I guess I assume mostly everyone has gone through something like that.
Yeah, but still.
You mentioned your own experience in plant medicine. Are you drawn to repeat it, or sort of one off?
I'm drawn to repeat it with that particular. I think the context of the container is really important.
Yeah.
There was a sense that, and there were instructions. Every person went through their journey, and they said like no talking, no touching. So in a way, it's a lonely process, but you're not lonely because you're in a group. So it's both. I really love that.
Well, do you think it's the resurgence of coming back to having these journey experiences with psychedelics, or do you think there's a whole new expectation that people have about using psychedelics to treat depression, addiction, PTSD? You know, that's what's the government.
Well, that's
is
what it's
funding.
turning into, sadly.
And
you know.
and I'm not sure everybody benefits from
Yeah.
the psychedelic experience.
No, of course. And that's, I mean, that's, you know, everyone's so excited about let's legalize the drugs, but that just means it's going to go to the hands of the medical and the pharmaceuticals. So, and that's what they'll do. You know, that's now it's going to treat depression and it'll treat psychosis and it'll treat this. But I think that apart from that, it's this loss of meaning that people, you know, that's the groundswell, and then it's being exploited, capitalized on.
I would just add one thing to that though. It is loss of meaning, it's all of that, yes. But it's also that a lot of psychiatric medications and stuff don't work very well.
No kidding.
So what that means is that people are looking for other things to do. So over a period, you know, over the last 50 or 40 or 50 years, when it's turned out that, say, for example, Prozac and the antidepressants haven't actually done what people hoped would happen, then they have to go and have to say, oh, well, there's got to be another way. So I think it's a multi-faceted issue.
Yeah, yes, because kind of comes back to, you know, what you're on about here, which is that none of that, those pills you're going to take, whatever for the plant medicine you're going to take, is a substitute for real exploration and facing your real terror and your dread and your trauma, whatever you want to call it, and having to face that. Otherwise, it's numbing. It can't be that.
I've been tracking ketamine therapy, and what I observe is, I think one of the draws is a lot of people have dramatic breakthroughs, but when you compare it across the board to everyone, they're loud and stand out. There's a lot of people, it exasperates their anxiety, their worry, their lack of meaning. They feel dissatisfied with the whole process. So, you know, for every veteran who has like a life changing, you'll have. But it's been, you know, the whole thing is I never, who wouldn't want to try something? You're on psychiatric medication. Here's somebody who's just come off psychiatric medication, who's been on it for 10 years. Such an appeal for that click. But I don't see it. I see magical stories immersed in sort of not great stories.
Well, the research is really problematic, Everyone who does the psychedelics at this point is already a believer. They
That's
all
right.
they already believe in it. They're already outliers who are upset with the system, and they love their therapist who they spend a ton of time with. And there have been, multiple instances where they come out later, they say, yeah, I didn't want to disappoint my therapist, so I rated myself as having improved a lot. And it's I think it's kind of damning for the research actually. But I mean, I think psychedelics are great, but I just think as far as like it being effective and measuring it, it's just not.
Well,
Not great.
ketamine's a special category too because it's legal-ish.
It's legal.
And so it's not being administered by therapists all that much. Ketamine's being administered by physicians. And I work with a lot of people who did not have good experiences. I know what you're talking about. And then, if you
Think about the difference between, oh, sorry.
Well, the ketamine thing, when it first began, it was more elongated time with the
Yeah.
practitioner, you know, it was more of a journey. Maybe, I forget how many days, you know probably more about this than I do, or not, but let's say 3 or 4 or a full day and a half, and then pre and follow up. Now, the ketamine clinics,
Yeah.
it's to be profitable. You get your unlicensed clinicians who help in some way. You bring in your anesthesiologist or your nurse practitioner in anesthesia, and it's a pretty short deal in and out in a clinic without a lot of a networked, more complex, sort of existential holding, but more of a linear, here it is, we're putting it in you, okay, let's see what happens, go back out in your world. So that's something that's happened too. And the more it proliferates, the more ketamine won't be what it could have been, because it's just it's too taxing on the provider to do it properly.
And then thinking about whether it's multi-day process, which I think, definitely would be preferable, or a one-day gig, and whatever psychedelic it is, I think about the difference between the word breakthrough and the word messy or the word journey. Breakthrough, it almost has a magic kind of, it's just, there's a moment, breakthrough, and then it's like clouds parting, but like messy and journey is like an extended, almost like a battle of with it takes endurance and some kind of courage and a companion or a trusted, loyal ally or something that's, through like dark forests and, like these journeys that are almost like grail searches. Sometimes I get too heroic about it, but it doesn't feel like, breakthrough feels like some kind of moment in time. I know, I'm not saying you meant it that way, but I hear these stories too of like somebody had this breakthrough, and then there's lots of like, or extra despair, or an untethering. So it feels much more real to call it messy and journeying, and heroes' journeys. You get swallowed up, by the monster or killed.
This setting your attention in these treatments, like what do you think you want to get out of this? It's like,
The AI does it now. That's the next.
There you
they've put
go.
in. So you type in your intention, and AI gives you
AI give it to you.
But I think to your point, David, I think one of the things that seems problematic with the whole psychedelic thing is like, even with what you're saying, how they say you do more of it and stuff, and they still do that with the MDMA stuff, but more prep and more integration. It's all supposing that the psychedelic experience is like this gold, and it's like the thing, and you've got to mine it, and in reality, I think it's probably more like what you're talking about, Dave. if it's doing something interesting, it's gonna break things open. You know, it's gonna break it open, and now you've got this.
To go
It's not
live.
even.
Now it's
I mean,
to go
3 integration sessions would definitely better, but
You still have to go back.
but
out.
it's really just like it's just part of a reflective life. You know, it's a lot of things that you're jumping into and breaking things open and looking at. It's psychedelics is just one of those. You know.
So, I wonder if maybe that has to do with our society being immature. Little kids have magical thinking. It's just like you find a magic wand that makes it
And
all
it's
better.
better.
And
Sure.
and we have these entire systems that are based on that,
Yeah.
like
Right.
exploiting that idea.
Yeah.
That
Exactly.
we're all stuck in magical thinking.
And in
And I-
confusion.
And it's not true.
A
And but it
confusion
keeps
about
getting exploited
cause.
because there's money.
Yeah.
And I think there's money in it, but I also think beyond the money thing is obvious that it exploited. And there's to bring it back to our theme, there's the fear, the dread, the fear of death, the fear of pain, that then people want a magic pill. Right. So then, I mean, those are two different things, financial exploitation, but I think the existential despair, the dread, the fear of death that we are unable to often, because we're immature, to metabolize that we're going to die.
Well, yeah, maybe. Oh, sorry.
Ross is going on.
I was gonna say maybe the orientation towards the cure and like towards, painlessness and all that. That it's all, one thing. That this idea of psychedelics towards cure is kind of like very death drive. It's like it's very, rather than psychedelics towards life, which would be obviously very messy and painful and evocative and unresolved. It's not about resolution.
Beckett has one little line there which I think is relevant. You're on Earth, there's no cure for that.
When you were talking about us being immature and having a magic wand, I was thinking of like a genie lamp. It never goes well. You get these genie 3 wishes, and it never ends well. You end up there's always a loophole to what you're asking for.
Yeah, they're trying to fuck with you.
Yeah.
There's always, mythology's full of where it goes wrong
Lots
by
of
trying to get
stories.
a magical solution.
Yeah.
Yeah, just full of it. And don't we see that?
And
And
our-
we still think, but this is going to do it. Ketamine's going to do it, or whatever.
And science is looking for this central driver, this magic molecule. I mean, it's a lot of different
Yes,
fields that
that's
have
going
this,
to-
whether it's genetic reductionism or, but a lot of these realities are, about constitutive interdependence.
Anti-aging
Huh?
also.
And
Anti-aging, yeah. Yeah, and then, if you conceptualize the causes as linear, then you're going to look for the magic bullet.
Right.
A lot of the modern therapies too, the EMDRs and the brain spotting and the clearing of trauma in 3 or 4 sessions. This starts to feel like that too.
Yeah, different discussion, but EMDR doesn't purport to clear in 3 or 4 sessions.
Well, maybe
Not if they-
that's the people that do it well. And
yeah,
deeply,
but there are a lot of people who do that.
right.
They say that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I hear that more than I hear.
Yes.
Like
Yes,
it's like
sad to
it's
see.
the same thing. You hear the people like, yeah, go. But then there's people that do psychedelics super deep.
Yeah, so I think, honestly, I'm going to make the assumption that we are all on the same page in this room about the fact that it's a journey and it's messy and there's no magic bullet. I think
Well, actually, if you use the bullet, then it would be resolved.
Yes. Especially if it
It's a
were
good
magic.
a silver bullet.
Yeah,
Mhm.
assuming you use that word, yeah.
Yeah.
You just use actually a bullet.
Choose an
That
actual.
would give people what they want, I guess.
Although I do have some bias here, and I would say there is a little bit of magic in ketamine when it comes to trauma.
Look,
But I also
I think,
predict.
wait, no, I'll take that back. I think there's a little bit of potential and magic in a lot of things. It's just not there.
Yeah.
And not the same thing for everybody. And it's still a matter, I actually think ketamine's done a lot of good for a lot of people. But No, I'm not saying that. I do think there's a lot of things, there's value.
But I
But-
also predict it'll be shut down. Because if you take Mind Bloom, so they offer
Well,
six sessions at home. They'll put you on 1200.
yeah.
You don't, nobody needs it. You can split it off, right? They've now just offered, what do you call it when you inject it into this, not IV, but just under the skin?
Subcutaneous.
So they're just offering that. This is people at home. They offer a package of 18 sessions at 1200 at home. There's going to be deaths. So.
Yeah, there will be. It'll be shut down. You're right. Yeah, no, there is some magic. It's not, but it's not magic. It's actually, there's, I wouldn't call it magic. But, and there's a lot out there that has value.
There
It's
is
not the
some.
same. It's not for everyone.
It's not for everyone.
That's the thing.
But
And people think,
there's some aspects of trauma I don't think you can. It's kind of beyond words. And I think with the ketamine, I think it can get into some corners that talking therapy perhaps at times cannot.
yes, I'm not a big, I'm not saying talk therapies.
You know,
That are anti-talk.
once you medicalize it, you're going to be looking for a cure.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that that's what people are seizing on, because that's not always what medication is about. Why not treat it like a diabetic who has to take ongoing medication for the rest of their life? And you should use psychedelics for the rest of your life, now and then, periodically. Why think of it as a cure instead of a way of getting to know yourself and exploring stuff and over time? How are we going to get beyond that cure mindset? Because I don't think that's what it's about. It doesn't cure anything.
But the thing is, if you think that Freud said that he could imagine, he thought, in fact, that the following century, i.e. ours, there could well be a pill that will solve the problem, the medical, in inverted commas, what they meant by medicine, the medical problem of mental distress. But that didn't mean that there would be such a thing. And I think that stuff like psychedelics and ketamine and all of that, I think one can have an open mind and say, well, this could be a role for it. It might actually help a lot, etc., etc. But then you've got to look at it to see whether it does do that. But you don't. I feel pretty open about it, but not feeling it's going to be the cure. And as Mike said, it could be something that helps you understand yourself and makes your life less miserable over the extent of it. But it doesn't have to be a cure. And if there is a cure, well, great. And that's very unlikely, but not. I don't think it needs to be excluded because it's a different question. The thing is, with people can come into therapy with pain, but in the end, quite a few people will want to change themselves and change their lives and all that, and that could be helped.
Well, I don't think therapy cures anything. I think it's a way of getting to know yourself.
Yes.
And that's exactly how I see psychedelics. It's another way of getting to know yourself.
Yes.
Meditation's a way of doing that. Yoga's a way of doing that. We just have this mindset about, we can cure pain.
Yeah.
And travel too. There's the whole idea of I don't know, like we never talk anymore about if you're going through a hard time, if you're trying to work through something, that you might go on some sort of adventure, you go soul searching. That's never a part of the conversation anymore. Hey, maybe you would need to, I don't know, revisit your hometown, talk to your family or the friends who you are closest to, and maybe you need to you know, check out something new, check out yoga, you know, try something to, you know, experience something new, you know,
You
to
don't think it's
reflect
in the
on.
conversation?
I don't, no, I don't think so.
Would you, but do you talk to your clients about that? Would you use that?
Good question.
I mean, it's just, that's.
Yeah, I think so. I think kids come up doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Let's just do something different.
What about
It's-
incubation practice?
Get out of the rut.
You know, like we used to convalesce, right? And incubation practices are cross-culture, really old practices where you're tended to and you just sort of
Go
sort of
down.
let it, you go down and it, whatever comes and there's some, you know, holding the boundaries, your boundaries are tended by somebody else and, you know, we don't do that.
You mean like
Well, that's what
sanitarium?
Lang did. That was
But
what
like
Lang
I mean, you can
Cemeteries?
leave them.
Sanitariums.
Yeah, but you can
Like-
leave.
Well, that's what they were doing in Freud's day. You know, people
there for
before
your own.
psychoanalysis, they'd go away for 3 months or 6 months to some luxury sanitarium where everybody attended to them
Or you
day and
get
night, and they came back feeling wonderful. And he kind of compared psychoanalysis to that. It's a time away from all that stuff.
But my point before, it's not that Freud excluded medication. It was not what psychoanalysis is basically about. It was about understanding the human condition in all levels.
You know, you're talking about cure. It's not. There's nothing to cure. There's a way
No.
to know yourself. There's other words that I've been trying to disabuse myself, and one of them that I can't stand is the word works. That works. Something works. It's like it's in the same vein as the word cure. Like there's something. When I think of works, I think of like some kind of tool you use to fix an electrical problem or something. It all goes into, for me, the lens that there's something broken or wrong that has to be fixed. And when I get rid of those words for myself, then now I'm freed up to think, well, what is the conversation, or what is the dynamic, or what else is there to do? And that feels very, very loosening, freeing to me. It all works. I can't stand that.
Everybody's trying to fix themselves. You know, that's another word I can't abide by. Fixing.
Well, it feels.
Does it work? Did it fix you?
Right, exactly. They go together.
But the new generation of therapists are being conditioned to formulate under medical necessity.
I know. It's awful.
Yeah.
So I'm a master at formulating in CBT and I use it, but the insurance companies love it.
Right.
And then I do psychoanalysis.
You do, yeah, you know the difference.
Yeah, but that whole thing of
Yeah.
they're conditioned to think
Yeah.
we need to fix it, we need to write it up like we're fixing it, we need to show that we're using methodology that's approved to fix it. It's
They
like
can code switch like you do.
McDonaldization through and through. And there are people working in psychosis who
Oh, God.
all they've been trained in is CBT.
What's that?
They've never been exposed to any psychoanalytic thinking at all, and they're working with people in extreme states. And when you talk to them about it, you just throw in a little bit of psychoanalysis 101, it's like, because they're deprived because it's the unconscious doesn't come into it.
So, thank you. We do need to wrap it up, so when, thank you.
Yeah.